This is One on One. We are honored to be joined by a very good friend, Reverend Dr. Buster Soaries, DeForest Buster Soaries, Jr., Senior Pastor, First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens, Somerset, New Jersey.
Yes, sir. Good to see you, Steve. Good to see you.
This must be a misprint.
What's
because
that?
29 years.
29 years.
You've been doing this.
And you've known me all 29 years.
I sure have. I sure have. And you have led a fascinating life, and you have more important work to do. But let me ask you this. I remember when you took over. I was going to say this parish.
That's right.
This congregation. You have grown it in a way that no one could imagine. Maybe you were the only one. What have been the keys to that?
Very progressive membership. Many people don't realize that a lot of ministers, including Martin Luther King, have great resistance within their congregation relative to their vision. Martin Luther King had to leave his church as a civil rights leader because his membership did not support his leadership when he was in Montgomery.
People don't realize that.
And so the first thing I found at First Baptist was a vibrant membership that wanted to not only grow the church, but wanted the church to be a catalyst for community development. And so I didn't have to fight the congregation when we formed the nonprofits to build housing. I didn't have to fight the congregation when we bought an abandoned warehouse and turned it into a health clinic. The congregation was literally the wind beneath my wings. And so that's the first thing I attributed to.
7,000 members.
Well, I see about 4,000 a month, but we've got, the computer says 7.
Right, okay. But you know, what's interesting, and let me disclose this, I often disclose that we have funders and different people we have relationships with to be fully transparent, but to be fully transparent, Reverend Soaries married my wife, Jennifer, and I.
Right.
At the Newark Club.
Right.
18 years ago.
High class.
I wish the Newark Club was still there. It's interesting. I remember that process. You made us come in. You made us talk seriously about the commitment of marriage.
Yeah.
Your ability to be a spiritual advisor, or your commitment to being a spiritual advisor, are very real for you. Talk about it.
Well, you know, there's a quote in the Bible that says, what difference does it make if you gain the whole world and lose your soul? And it is in your soul that resides your values, your integrity, your ethics, your perspective on right and wrong, how you treat people. And I think to the extent that we fail to nurture the spirit, the soul, we become very materialistic and very achievement-oriented without really focusing on who we are. What is our real identity? Our real identity is inside, not outside.
You and I have also had a lot of conversations about race relations, not just in the state, but in this country. In your opinion, Reverend, where are we today, and how far apart are we?
Yeah. You know, it's tricky. I kind of disagree with a lot of my peers in terms of believing that we really are doing better now in terms of race than we've ever done.
You believe that?
Oh, no question about it. Now, do we have a growing number of incidents that are ugly and mean and racist? Of course. But I think if you look at all the data says that younger people in America really believe, Pew did a study, younger people really believe that interracial marriage is better for the country than older people. And so I just think the media has a tendency to appropriately cover incidents that make race relations look worse than they are.
That we in the media are contributing?
Oh, absolutely.
How so?
There's no question.
Oh, well, if there's, respectfully, Reverend, there's an incident involving a police officer, be he or she white or not, with an African-American young man or an older gentleman, Eric Garner, so many cases, there's so many cases. We need to cover that.
Oh, no question.
Okay,
it's appropriate.
Okay,
media coverage is appropriate.
Okay,
however,
go ahead.
The media coverage, I think, can blur reality to the extent that, I mean, look at all law enforcement people that never shoot anyone. So I just think that the prominence that media gives to those kinds of incidents obscures the data, and the data will not reinforce the idea that most cops are racist and most whites are racist and that race relations is worse.
You know, when we talk about racial disparities in terms of education and housing and income, et cetera. Your philosophy, as I've always understood it, in large part, beyond government programs, beyond civil rights laws,
Right.
you have argued that there is a deep responsibility on the part of the African-American community to try to do for itself when it can.
Well, there's no question. Let's look back 100 years. 100 years ago, in the post-slavery era, African Americans had a passion for education. That passion, in large measure, has been lost. You can't legislate passion. Most of the black colleges were formed right after slavery. And so if a community is going to prosper, there's got to be a cultural, spiritual commitment to certain principles, certain ethics. And that's not just true of African Americans, it's true of the whole country. And so I just think that a lot of what happens systemically is reinforced by people's values. And conversely, when people's values are strong, it really doesn't matter as much what the systems do. Slavery was legal, segregation was legal, but we had Thurgood Marshall. We had
On the Supreme Court.
we had Shirley Chisholm. I mean, we had Adam Clayton Powell
From Harlem.
Martin Luther King had a PhD in his early 20s. So all I'm saying is that no question about it. What I'm saying is that African Americans, like every other group, have got to assume greater responsibility for our own children, for our own education, for our own businesses, because if we don't, no one else will do for us what we fail to do for ourselves.
Do you believe in reparations?
Well, of sorts, yeah. I don't know if the word is the proper word, but I do believe that after over 250 years of working without pay, that society does bear the burden of helping those that were suppressed. I don't know exactly the formula for reparations, but in large measure, we've received a lot of benefits since the 1960s. We don't call them reparations, but we've had poverty programs, we've had Head Start, we've had all kinds of benefits that have been aimed at African Americans. And so I don't think we're without, those benefits.
Reverend, to what degree do you believe President Trump has contributed to race relations and the conversation about race in this country?
Well, I think President Trump has probably made it a bit more comfortable for racists to be expressive.
For racists?
For racists.
White supremacists?
Yeah. And I don't think he gets that. I don't think he really understands the extent to which he has given permission to white supremacists to be bolder than they've been over the last 50 years.
You think he cares?
But
if he's done that?
I don't know. I don't know if he cares. He doesn't seem to care. What I'm equally concerned about, however, is what we failed to do in the last 50 years to teach people about each other after the laws were passed. I mean, it's one thing to do legislation that allows for equal rights and access and interaction, but it's something completely different to really help, for instance, white children understand the pain of slavery, black children to understand the pain of Holocaust, to help all children understand the immigrant experience where Eastern Europeans came here and Catholics were suppressed.
That's right.
I just think it's important for all of us to know the whole story.
You believe deeply in empathy, do you not?
Oh,
Trying
no
to
question.
empathize.
Empathy is when I care so much about your situation that it hurts me that you're hurt. And I believe that. I believe in empathy.
Let me try this. I can try to imagine what your experience has been, but I can't really put myself in your shoes.
Right.
Nor could you put yourself in mine. I'm going to argue that yours have been more difficult shoes to be in, but what does empathy really look like if I can't get in your shoes?
What it means is that I accept your description of how it feels to be in your shoes, and I respond accordingly. So empathy, if I step on your foot and you say that really hurts, I can't argue that it shouldn't hurt. Right. I have to embrace the fact that you believe it hurts and then help you in your prescribed method of alleviating the pain.
Speaking about empathy,
yeah.
You just told me that, and you announced this, that you're stepping down after 30 years in 2020. And you also told me that you don't think you're going to have any problem doing that.
So be empathetic and love me for that.
I love you. I love you
years.
either way. But I sit there and I go, look at this guy. He's got so much more to give.
But I don't have to give it at that address.
Wow. I empathize, but more importantly, I respect you tremendously. And,
well, thank you.
And learn every time you're with us. And my wife and I learned a lot of lessons just from sitting with you and teaching us about marriage.
We had fun. Thank you. Bless
Thank you, Reverend.
All righty.
That's why I love this show. People like Reverend Soaries. Thanks. We'll be right back.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by PSE&G, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, the Northward Center, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, the New Jersey Education Association, the Russell Berry Foundation, United Airlines, and by Caldwell University. Promotional support provided by Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey and by Jaffe Communications. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.